All right, so now I'm going to show you how to EQ guitars and how to make those sound awesome and sweet and shredding like you want them to sound in your worship experiences. So I've actually got the guitar channel selected already here, and this is a pretty good filter set up on this guitar. So I'm going to show you why this works and why this is good for the sound. So again, I'm going to reference the Philosophy of Mixing video. If you haven't watched it yet, be sure to watch that. I'm going to reference that video and say we talked about taking up those frequency ranges. So your guitars are going to be a lot of mid-range frequencies. So that's like these right here in the middle. That's why they're called mid-range. That's not supposed to be smart Alex sounding, but it kind of was. Anyways, so that's your mid-range frequencies. So that's where you want a lot of your guitar to come in at. So we've got that high-pass filter on, just like we did on the vocals, which is good because that means you're not hearing the low end that you want to hear from the bass and the kick drum. And we've actually got a little boost. So around 200 hertz right here, you got a boost of about 2K. So that's actually okay. So even though we want to hear mostly mid-range, boosting it somewhere around 200 or 300 by just a little bit, by no more than like 2 or 3 dB, is actually okay because that's going to give you a little bit of a warm sound to your guitar. So it's not going to sound so harsh. Because if you're up playing worship music, you don't want it to sound like you're in a death metal band. Maybe on certain Sundays, maybe you'll decide that that's a stylistic choice you want to do, but I doubt that that's the direction that Fresh Life is moving in. So a little boost around 200, is perfectly fine because that's going to give you some warm sounds. So up here on the end, though, we've got a dip at about 2,000, so 2 kilohertz. We've got a dip of about 2 dB, so, or that might actually be 3. So with that dip there, basically what that's doing is between 2 and 4K. I mentioned on the vocals that 3K is actually a really pleasant frequency, and it's nice to hear 3K, but you don't want every single instrument to be playing in that 3K range, because if it is, then you're going to have an overload of that frequency. So you want that to stand out, but that's probably going to be coming mostly from your voices. So a dip around 2 to 4K on your guitars is probably good because that's going to take away some of those higher frequencies that you don't want to hear, and it's going to focus on the mid-range frequencies here in the middle that you do want to hear. So this actually also, if you go up here around 5K, which I'm actually going to move that up a little bit. So I'm going to move that to maybe 6.3. It's got a slight boost, maybe like 1 dB. So it's got like a 1 dB boost up here. If you move that to 2, that'd probably be safe too. So even though you want to hear those mid-range frequencies, there is some nice upper harmonics, especially in electric guitar. So actually, I'm going to move that back down to 1 dB. So you don't want to hear too much of that, but having just that 1 dB boost up at the top, it's going to be super subtle, but it's going to allow for some of those like higher frequencies to pass through that actually will add a lot to the full mix of the band. So if I switch over to their acoustic guitar channel, it's super similar. So this is kind of just a good example of how like different instruments may sound a little bit different. So for this acoustic guitar, for example, they've got the filter pushed up a little bit more. They've got a boost around 800. So maybe this guitar doesn't actually put off the mid-range frequencies that you really want to hear. And then they've got a dip at about 1.25. So maybe this is kind of set for this particular instrument. Might be that you're not hearing those mid-ranges that you want to hear, or you're hearing, an unpleasant frequency around 1,000 that you don't want to hear, and they've got a little extra boost on the high end. So there's nothing wrong with this filter either. These are both set up perfectly fine here. Personally, I like this one a little better, but it depends on the instrument that you're using. Not all of them are going to be the same. But something like this, just making sure that those mid-range frequencies are coming through, you're cutting out somewhere probably between 1 or 2 to 4K, boosting a little bit on the high end, and then making sure that filter's on. So all those things should get you to a pretty good sounding guitar, and you can shred the way that the Lord intended you to. So awesome.